Welcome everyone. Please sit comfortably. Welcome to our sangha online. Today we're continuing our tradition of having people who have completed Jukai, receiving the precepts, to give a way-seeking mind talk about what has brought them to practice and what aspects of practice inspire them. So Francis Shinka, Forest Refuge, is going to give a talk to us today, so I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm quite new to the sangha and studying Buddhism, so most of what I talk about will be the influences which have brought me to be here now. So I grew up in the Dandenong Ranges, which is just northeast of Melbourne, and my playground was a forest. It has amazing mountain ash trees and fern trees, and a river or a creek going through it. And my bestie and I would play down there on weekends. We'd build huts. One of our huts had a snake hole in it, but we didn't really mind. We never met the snake. Until, of course, my friend's dad heard about the snake and then deconstructed our hut. We also had mud fights and would go home and be hosed down outside. It was the 80s. And we also collected slaters, which some people I think call them roly-poly bugs. And I can remember hearing my friend's mother one day screeching at my bestie about having slaters in the washing machine. So we did have a lot of fondness for our forest. And it was a nice way to grow up. We also had a game where we would have to go and save our boyfriends, and this meant going to other countries and entering other cultures. So that was kind of exciting.
Can you say more about that?
So we were these, apparently, I think we were 17-year-olds, but it was probably a number we plucked out of the air. And for whatever reason, our boyfriends would get kidnapped and taken to other countries. So we then had to go there and save them and fight people. And so this was all in the backdrop of mountain ash trees and fern trees. I don't know where we came up with this game, but that's something that we actually played quite often. We also played a game of teachers, and interestingly, both of us became teachers. So I grew up with an awe of the forest and animals and I guess the natural world, really. From my window, I could actually see Sylvan Dam, if you know about Melbourne, and behind it had mountains. And when the full moon came up and reflected in the dam, it was really quite beautiful. So that, as a young age, I sort of did have an awe of the natural world around me. My parents, my mother was quite a strong-minded or strong-willed, a little bit of a bolshie, but she had quite a strong sense of social justice. She actually started a union back in the 60s, which came on to be, or ended up being the dental nurses union. My dad was also, held social justice as a strong virtue, but he was a little bit more conservative than my mum, and would do so through Rotary, so doing things like funding for wells for people in Malaysia for clean drinking water. My teenage years, I went to a school called Billanook, which was a uniting church school, and that's where I've started to sort of foster a sense of spiritual curiosity. I had a palm tree in my bedroom that I called Jesus, and it certainly, looking back, it kind of sounds like it's a joke, but it really wasn't. It was my way of respecting Christianity. And my bestie at school was an Aboriginal girl. She was very cheeky, and I was also very cheeky. But Emma would just sort of smile at teachers and they would melt, and then I'd be told off, which was okay. I was happy to wear that. I also had a friend called Simon who lived in the forest with a fellow who was sort of like a surrogate dad, I suppose. And they practiced something, and I actually don't know what it is, but I thought I'd include it in my talk because I think it might have been the ashram that was in Fitzroy, maybe, that Marco mentioned in his talk. So I went there a couple of times. And after that, after Year 12, I then went up to Darwin. My school had a connection with a school up in Darwin, which was predominantly Aboriginal. And actually during Year 10, I was able to go up to another place called Mornington Island, which is in the sort of just off Queensland, which is an Aboriginal reserve. So these experiences sort of led me to have almost a little bit of envy with Aboriginal spirituality and the connection to the land, and a sense of really sort of knowing who they are. And it's something that I guess I was seeking. But at the same time, I was also quite acutely aware of colonisation and the impact of that, and had a bit of a sense of shame, if I'm honest. So later I went up to Camilda College, which is in Darwin, and I also travelled into Aboriginal reserves and worked with the students there. And I do really enjoy the humour that Aboriginal people have. It's quite cheeky and quite fun. After Darwin, after returning back to Melbourne, I then went to university and studied Japanese, but actually Asian studies. And during that time, I lived in Japan at 3 different times, and felt very comfortable there. And I really enjoyed going to temples. Always kind of felt quite comfortable. The last time I went there, I was doing research into film, Japanese film, and I found a female director, Naomi Kawase, who managed, through her videography filmography, would capture the kind of the essence of things, which I believe relates to Buddhism in a sense that when you're comfortable in your environment, or not comfortable in your environment, but when you understand that you're sort of part of the environment, you are the environment as well, and seeing things with their beauty or their essence. I felt that she kind of captured that. When I lived in Japan, I also met an Australian woman called, well, actually I don't know what her name is, but her role was called Didi, and she taught meditation, and I would go and join her. We also went on night walks. So that was quite interesting to do so. Near where I lived, there was a park, and in the park there was a Shinto shrine, and it had like a platform that you could actually sit on, and I would sit there and meditate looking into a forest. After returning to Australia, I completed my DPed, and then I went to China. And in China, I continued to enjoy being in temples and praying, even though at that point I wasn't a Buddhist. I did join a Taiwanese sangha for a little while, which was good, but it sort of became a bit strange with personalities and so on. And then in China, I also got married and had my child. So after returning back to Australia, I moved to Canberra. I didn't have immediate family in Melbourne, and Canberra seemed like a good place. I became acutely aware of how dire the climate crisis had become, and not really knowing what I could do, but with a sense of social justice, I joined Extinction Rebellion because I felt that I needed to do something. I also volunteered at the Australian Tent Embassy planting trees, because to me that was kind of my way of giving back. And it's and I do believe that the influence of my parents of holding social justice as a strong virtue definitely played into that. I met Nettie at that time, and we discussed meditation. And I shortly joined, and it was also around that time that I'd also received information that I just really couldn't navigate very well at all. So it felt like things were sort of falling apart at that point. So it was quite lucky that I had met Nettie then. So I guess, at this point of time, I guess Buddhism for me, I'm working with Mo at the moment, but Buddhism for me is about that interconnectedness and being whole and being in a place that is timeless, spacelessness, and also with a sense of social justice. So so they are the three main influences that have sort of brought me to where I am today here. Okay, so that's me. Thank you for listening.
Let's make it so we can see everyone. Okay, so I'm just going to plug in the microphone so we get better audio for the assembly and people online. Can you hear all right online? Okay. Anybody in the Zendo or online that would like to ask Francis a question or comment? Tony, just move the microphone a little closer to him.
Now, Francis, how, I don't know, what makes you come back to meditation and come back for here and tune in online, and that what makes you come back, and or how has practice changed you, benefited you?
I think a number of ways. I would say that throughout my life, I was seeking something. And I mean, as I mentioned, I was a little envious of the spirituality that Aboriginal people have, and I couldn't find that elsewhere. That's not something that I was getting from my school. So that's part of it. Like I think that it's always been something that I was looking for. And I would say it was also kind of a timely thing when I met Nettie and could join here, because of where I was at that point of time. But of course it is the meditation, but it's also the Buddhism. Like Buddhism kind of offers a way to understand the world and to understand your own mind. So I would say that's, and just living more easily and having a time to sort of really, or the headspace, I suppose, to really appreciate the way things are. And even if they're not great in that moment, they just don't seem that harsh if you don't have something to sort of help you. Yeah, does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. So I suppose I'd like to ask, how has it changed how you move in the world? I guess the way you're saying it, it sounds like you're moving with more ease, I suppose, because you're more at peace with the world.
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. It's lovely to be able to connect your name, Shika, to your story and your experiences in childhood. So many beautiful images. I love the image of Jesus as a palm tree. It does make sense. It really does. Particularly, yeah. Perhaps on Palm Sunday it would make sense. Yeah. And I'm thinking that coming alive in you, that spirituality that you could see in your friend is I do feel that's something you share. So so thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. That was terrific. Just amazing how we touched on this when I did my talk, that we're coming from such different directions, and we did have a sort of a brief conversation about this, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say now. Looking back and sort of delving in and sort of really teasing out your past, I suppose. Did you learn stuff that you perhaps, or probably we all know it, but it kind of brings it to your forebrain? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting, like particularly when you're looking at your life in a lens of how did I get to be here practicing Buddhism. You sort of, to see those influences, I had not really thought about them until I started putting it onto paper and actually thinking about it and clarifying. It's like, wow, that's actually really quite interesting how it's kind of evolved. And you kind of wondered also, like, how much choice did I actually even have in it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna?
Yeah, thank you so much, Francis. Really beautiful to hear this thread of your journey. I'm curious just to, like you mentioned, this sense of deep, I don't know, panic with kind of, realizing, where we're at with climate crisis and things. And I just wondered if you could speak to how, how that conversation has gone forward together with your practice.
Sorry, so you're asking me, like, just how, like, being acutely aware of the climate crisis and how the practice is part of that.
Yeah, like whether, because I think you said that you were really facing those facts kind of just before you met Nettie, if I understood right. So I was wondering, if your practice has shifted your presence with that at all.
Okay. I guess in terms of just generally being more comfortable with the world around me, has I don't think I panic as much as I used to, because it was something that it is something that is very serious. But I would say by practicing it, it does. You still see the world how it is, and it is still easier to move within that world or relate to the world. But it's still, it's still something that's incredibly serious. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Could I say just a couple of things on that?
Yes, please.
Just a couple of thoughts on realizing that there's a climate crisis, and then also having a Buddhist practice around acceptance. What that can do is, it might sound like it means you won't bother doing anything, like, oh well, too bad, that's how it is. But it doesn't have that effect. Instead, I think what happens is you're not wasting energy by being fretful or being resistant to the fact of the matter with maybe anger or feeling, having negative thoughts about humanity being a scourge on the earth, or thoughts like that actually just drain your energy. Instead, I think what it does is you get a sense of, what can I do given my world that I'm in? I don't have to be a hero, but what things can I do? And you might not do anything directly related to climate, but you're still being a benefit in the world. So I think it actually gives you more energy to work out how to be beneficial when you've got a practice. As an activist with a practice, I think often activists who have practice often have more energy and more joy, even if they're dealing with really difficult, they're willing to see really difficult realities.
Thank you, Nettie. You put it far more succinctly than I could have said.
I think, Zenko, Jack, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just really wanted to thank you, because it was so amazing to hear. I'd heard little bits of your story, but not much, and so it was really, really nice to hear the things that have influenced you, and your openness to spirituality from a young age, and just your quirkiness and all that sort of thing. Rescuing your boyfriends from overs.
We were very serious about it.
But that's nice too, because it means it's kind of like you're wanting to help and do the right thing by people and stuff like that. I don't know, something very, very sweet about that too. So thank you. And it also makes me appreciate too, oftentimes when we're growing up in Australia, we do have access to, or we grow up and the bush is not far away, and we're really so fortunate to have that. Because we had that too, I grew up in Canberra, and you didn't have to go that far to get away from the burbs. You could be, at the very least out in farmland very quickly, and so on. And of course there used to be the enormous all the pine forests through there that were lost in the fire, but it was beautiful to grow up among that. And we're so lucky in Australia to have all of that. And also we have the privilege of seeping into our bodies, you know, some of this sense of Indigenous spirituality as well. Yeah, and you know, when I was very young, I had an Aboriginal friend as well, you know, and just the loveliness of that. Yeah, so thank you so much. It was beautiful.
Thank you, Jack.
Jamal.
Yeah, thank you. I was noticing a thread in your talk around a kind of a draw towards cultural difference. You know, so you spoke about your Indigenous friends growing up, but also, you know, you went off to work in Japan and you spent time in China, and you seemed quite often kind of, you know, drawn out and drawn towards other cultures. And I find it interesting that, you know, as it turns out, you've come back to Australia and then you know, joining a kind of a Western Zen sangha rather than like a Japanese Zen sangha or anything, right? Like with that connection you have, it's just an interesting kind of observation. And so I guess I'm curious as to, like, I guess, could you talk more about that crossing and that intersection, right? As a Western person who's now living in Australia and as part of a, you know, predominantly Western sangha, it's like, you know, well, is there something in that takes both your background and the kind of that draw towards external or other cultures as well? Or is there any, you know, do you have any reflections from your time with other cultures, and particularly with Japan, where, you know, our tradition comes from? Are there things that we can learn from that, or ways that we can, you know, kind of be more kind of true to the core teachings, or anything else as people who are not from, you know, who have adopted this culture and that kind of thing?
Thank you. I would say that I think we're really lucky in Australia, because Buddhism has changed so much from its beginnings coming through China and then into Japan. We haven't brought the culture of those places with us, meaning that it's sort of quite accessible from here, but at the same time having like the deep traditions as well. Does that kind of answer your question?
Do you feel like the Japanese Buddhism is not accessible?
I don't think it's accessible. I think of course it's accessible, of course. And yeah, sorry, that was probably a little misleading. I think as a Western person, like learning it in a sangha that's quite open, and it doesn't have the same cultural. I don't know if hierarchy is the same kind of word. No, is the word I'm after, but not having those kind of old traditions. I think I feel it's more accessible here, if I'm honest. Yeah. There is still very much in Japan that there is a senpai and then there's the lower person, and I think that and there's nothing wrong with that, because we should learn from people who are more educated than us. But I do enjoy the freedom of everyone still being on a similar. Everyone still has the same amount of respect. Does that answer? Is that for me anyway? Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, one more question from Tony.
So, Francis, what do you find is the most difficult part of practice, or the things that you sort of go, oh, I failed that one again, or something like that?
Getting up on a Monday morning, I would say, is the most difficult thing.
Getting up on a Monday morning.
in winter.
Right. Anything, anything else less basic, more less basic than getting up on a Monday morning?
I don't know, really. I guess it's sort of something that you take in your own path, isn't it? Like everyone has their own path for learning Buddhism and so on. So probably time also is a factor, isn't it, though? Like how much in this busy world that we live in, finding time for everything. And to be able to do it as much as what you'd like to do. Like you sort of think, I'd love to be able to do that. And then it's like, yeah, but I've got these other things that I actually have to do as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think getting up on a Monday morning is a pretty good answer. Suzuki Roshi often would say, just turn up, that's the thing. Just turn up, do zazen. The rest looks after itself. So yeah, turning up. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here to hear Francis's way-seeking mind. So let's finish with our chanting and then we'll do some prostrations together.
Things are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.